All right, well, thank you for having me today. I'm glad to see a good crowd that came to listen to what we have to talk about. Certainly the golf course gets me excited, and I hope that taking care of your golf courses is as important to you as it is to us. Today I want to talk about where we've been. Mr. Brown mentioned I've been here for 18 years. Last week, a couple weeks ago, I spoke at the Garden Club, and they said that there. Miss Hooper asked me if I started here when I was 9. And so it's been a number of years, but I've enjoyed my time here. We've accomplished a lot here. I want to show you today where we've been. Let's look at the past, the good and the bad. I saw Mr. Lance here. He was on the Green Committee, the chairman, when I was hired here. And so he's going to see some pictures today that maybe he doesn't want to see again. But it's good for you all to see that and to understand. Before I get into the presentation, though, we're going to talk about future plans as well. But before I do that, I'd like to recognize my team. These guys are really what makes this place go. I can be the greatest leader ever, but if these guys don't do a good job and make it happen, nothing will happen. Okay, so let's give a round of applause to all my team. All right, so let's start with a little bit of history. I want to go through where we've been as a club, as a golf course operation. Again, when I arrived here, things were not so good. So I want to show you some of that. It's good to see and to know where you've been so that you can understand where you are today and where you want to go for the future. And so as we think about that, I think some history will be helpful today. As part of that, though, I want to understand where you are. All right? How many, just show of hands, how many of you were here in 2005 when I was hired? Okay, more than I thought. Okay, look around, there's a few. Again, you're going to see some pictures today from old you may not want to see. How many of you have been here less than 5 years? Raise your hand. Okay, I'll say just as many, right? Ted showed us some data a few months ago that almost half of the membership has been here less than 4 to 5 years. Okay, so you haven't seen a lot of the problems that we're going to talk about today and some of the issues because you're living off the projects, the money, the things that we've done as a golf course operation in the past that have made this place good. But as you know, if you have a home, most of you have a home here, right? If you didn't do a renovation once every 25 years, you're probably going to be in worse shape than the guy who keeps up with it on a 5 to 10 year basis, right? And so the golf course is no different. So let's get started and look at what our issues are. I want to first talk about the turf growing conditions. Okay, this is going to show us kind of where we've been and what things look like when I arrived. There are a lot of things out here that impact the way the golf course grows. Okay, one of the first ones is soil conditions. I did an hour presentation on just soils to the Garden Club 3 weeks ago. All right, so just this one topic, I could spend an entire hour today and just talk to you about soils and the issues that we have with this. As I go through this presentation, if I did that for every topic, we'd be here all day, right? So I'm just gonna cover the high points. Certainly we'll have questions at the end, but there are a lot of things that impact what we do on the golf course and how the grass grows. All right, so here's what I found when I arrived. You have 2 different soil types here. You have gumbo clay and you have sugar sand. All right, notice the pictures. Those look completely different. And in fact, they could not be more opposite. Those are so opposite. They're on each end of the scale. Gumbo clay is going to be very wet. Anybody play golf, you know the wet holes, right? You know the holes when it rains are cart path only. Those are probably the gumbo clay holes. It's a very thick soil. It's sticky, it's wet. When you fertilize it, though, the good news is those clays hold the nutrients really well. Okay, on the other end, you have sugar sand. See that dry hole, very sandy? You would expect the whole island to be that way, right? We're, 8 miles from the ocean? It's not that way. You have 2 very different soils. That soil, the sugar sand, is going to be extremely dry. You can't water some of those holes enough that have that sand in them. They're always dry. The other part of that is they're very infertile. You need to fertilize that 10 times more and water more, way more than you do that gumbo clay. Okay, think about that from a management perspective. If we had one soil across the entire golf course, that would be ideal, right? I could fertilize everything the same. I could water everything the same. Not the case here. In fact, it's not even close. If they were at least close, that would make things easier for me, right? But literally you can go from number 1 to number 2 to number 3 and find a different soil on each hole. All right, that makes it tough for us to manage. What else did I find when I arrived? We had serious tree problems here. Okay? Trees cause a lot of things, but the first issue that I had to deal with when I got here is that there was a safety problem. All right, this tree on the left had top-throw root rot. That's a laurel oak. And about 40 years old, 40 to 50 years old, those trees begin to decline. A good windstorm would come up. The top's very heavy. The top gets blown around. Well, it has no roots because of top-throw root rot. They would just push over like that. Imagine if you're out playing golf on a windy day and the trees are toppling. Same thing, see that limb that's broken off just above that carpet path? That happened all the time. Okay, there was a 50-page report on my desk handed to me the day I started from an arborist who looked at every single tree on the golf courses. All right, and his recommendation in that report was you have a serious problem. You need to get some tree issues taken care of or people are going to get hurt. So we did a lot of tree work at first to make things safe. Trees cause other problems though. The biggest one that I found when I arrived was shade on the green. All right, the shaded greens problem, we have Bermuda grass here. All right, Bermuda grass and shade, they don't work together well. Bermuda grass needs full sunlight. It's not a shade-tolerant grass. And so when we had shade on the greens, that was a big problem. Many of the greens were thin, no grass, difficult to grow. I'll show you some pictures in a moment, but big problem. Also, too, remember, there's shade in fairways and rough, different areas. This is on Morgan River number 4. Look at all that shade down the right-hand side of that hole. What else do you notice in that picture, though? Cart path. If you mix traffic with shade, what do you get? It's not much grass, okay? You get dirt. If you were to go on that hole today, you're going to see thin conditions even today. So, shade, big problem that I encountered when I arrived. Trees also make big roots. All right, we did a cart path project in 2018. You see that picture from 08. Look at the size of that root. I saw quite a few folks bicycling on the new cart paths today and enjoying that. You would not have enjoyed that 10, 15 years ago. Okay? Cart paths were terrible, but roots do a lot of infrastructure damage. Also notice, look at those feeder roots going into the green. That's the back of 4 cottonite green right there. Roots from trees compete with turf. All right, that was a big problem when I arrived too. As you root prune, as you put new greens in, as you do repairs, you can deal with root issues, you can deal with tree issues where it's sucking the water and nutrients. Those tree roots are wanting the same thing your grass wants. They want water and nutrients. So they send them out looking for that, but that's bad for your grass. All right, let's talk about some pest pressures. All right, you've heard in my emails the last few weeks, we've talked about nematodes. So let me explain in a little more detail what nematodes are. Nematodes are microscopic worms that live in the soil. All right, they're naturally there. In your garden, anywhere you go, there's going to be nematodes. They're not always bad. These microscopic worms, though, they eat the roots of plants. If you're trying to go grow a plant that we're playing golf on, and they're damaging the root system, that's a bad thing, right? Okay, so you can tolerate, you can live with nematodes, they're always there, but when they get to certain levels and become so bad, they can really hurt your turf. Okay, here's some of those old pictures. The folks who are here, 2005, 2008, I see Jim Farger right here in the front. That's right behind his house. Okay, so at that time we had tip-dwarf Bermuda greens. Today we have mini Birdie, a newer type of Bermuda, but in those old greens, the standard practice was to overseed that. Okay, as you overseed, you have to transition back to the summer Bermuda grass each year. When you do that, inevitably it's going to hurt the base grass. And that was part of that problem, though. When you throw in shade, when you throw in nematodes, when you throw in bad water, when you compound factors, you could really have big problems. Okay, and I want to make that point earlier. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but all these factors are compounding. All right, if I can just go fix one thing and the problem be solved, this job would be easy. The problem is that you have 4 and 5 and 6 factors sometimes that are all affecting the same part of the golf course that make it extremely difficult to cure whatever the turf loss problem may be. Okay, but nematodes, when they are high, they can do tremendous damage. We did tests on these greens before they were redone. The standard number that you would treat for of sting nematodes are 12 sting nematodes per 100 cubic centimeters of soil. When they did the test on those greens, take a guess at what they were. One of them was 300, one of them was 500, the other one was 900, and the scientist said, I quit counting. Okay, they were tremendously high. And so hence, dead grass, right? So it's an issue. We have to keep those under control. Here's some more pictures. You can see the thinning grass is not affecting the whole green. There's a picture of roots that have been impacted by nematodes. Notice how they're kind of brown, black, dark. That's not good. Healthy roots would be nice and white. They'd be very fibrous. Also, too, notice how the ends are chewed off. Okay, if those were healthy, you'd have, again, nice, fibrous, white roots on there. It wouldn't be black. It wouldn't be chewed off the ends like that. What other pest pressures do we have? Well, disease is a big issue here. All right, and I've taken two of the more prominent ones and taken pictures here, so let me describe what these are. The picture on the left is called takeoff patch. All right, you're familiar? That's number 13 green of Morgan from 4 years ago, and guess what? You see the same thing if you're out there today. Anybody notice that? We have disease on that green again. So let me talk about takeoff patch. This is probably the most problematic disease, the one that worries me the most as far as turf damage to our greens. Takeoff patch on Bermuda grass inoculates in the fall. Okay, so this disease that you're seeing right now on 13 Morgan actually set in the fall. It doesn't show the damage until the spring. That's a little unusual. Most diseases, when they affect you, you get sick immediately. Well, that's not how this works. Okay, this disease sets in the fall, the damage is in the spring. It's a very opportunistic disease, though. You get this disease when you have high pH, when you have bad water, when you have short roots, and when you have nematodes. Guess what we have? Okay? So we did, I went to classes for the last 3 years. This is top of the list for the scientists to try to figure out this disease. It's a problematic one, particularly in our area, in our part of the country. But as I've taken the classes, we sprayed everything correctly, did everything that you should do, and guess what? We still have disease. It's like you. You may be healthy, you may run, jog, you're in great shape, you go to the doctor as much as you should, you take your vitamins, but are you always healthy? That's not the way it works, right? Everybody gets sick. Well, it's the same with turf. Just like you, though, if you go outside and you're wet and cold, and then you come in, you're going to be more susceptible to get infection or disease that may be around if you're weakened, right? It's the same way with turf. So that disease is problematic, and that's one that we are fighting now. We'll continue to fight, given all those conditions that I described to you. That will grow out of it. It's not going to kill the greens, but those spots are ugly, and it's definitely thinned out some spots on 13 Morgan and a few other greens that are not good. Let's look at the disease on the right. That's called Pythium. How many of you are from up north? If you have bent grass greens, you've heard your superintendent talk about Pythium. That's the one that scares bent grass guys, like takeoff patch scares me. Okay, but guess what? Bermuda grass greens, that's on our greens. Bermuda grass greens can get Pythium as well. All right. Temperatures here in the low country and in our area are very, very much perfect and right for a lot of disease. Okay, 70 degrees, 65, 70, that's perfect for a lot of the diseases that turf grasses can get. Where do we stay all spring and all summer? The great weather you enjoy for golf, guess what? Perfect for disease. Okay, when we get those humid, cloudy, foggy days and it's 70 degrees, y'all are out playing golf and enjoying life. I'm in the office sweating because I know the pressure that's on the golf course. Okay, big problem. All right, I could go on. There's so many pressures here. All right, mole crickets. Anybody ever wonder what a mole cricket looked like? There you go. It's a nasty little creature, right? There's damage on the right-hand side of number 1 Morgan River this week. The mole crickets are going absolutely berserk right now. Here's the difficulty, though. Mole crickets, the best time to control these crickets are at hatch. Well, that doesn't happen until June 1, somewhere in that time period. I can spray these big guys all day long, and it's marginal control at best. Okay, so you say, well, just go spray. Well, it's not that easy. Okay, you go spray, and I'm throwing money at it, throwing product at it, but it's not working. All right, you got to get those guys when they're little and hope that you get enough control that you don't have this damage the following year. All right, all these pests are like that. Pomana, we struggle with pomana. You hear my emails and complaining, the controls are not working. Pomana is the most resilient grass that the turf world knows. It can grow anywhere. Anywhere, okay? Good as crap, but we can talk about all this, even moles. All right, we have animals burrowing in the ground that do damage to us too. So there's a lot of pressure on these golf courses. All right, let me talk about the last one. You've heard me mention water quality. This is another difficult issue that we have to deal with here on our golf courses. The fact is, we're in a salty environment, right? You look outside, the salt marsh is 100 yards away. Okay, you're going to have salt in the soil, you're going to have salt in your water to some degree, but you hope that it's manageable, all right? And our water quality is marginal, okay? It's not perfectly clean. There's other courses that have better water than us. There's other courses that have not as good water as we do, okay? It's one of those things as a manager, though, that I have to deal with. Let's talk about bicarbonates as well. We're going to talk more about this in a minute, but the bicarbonate level is actually going up as well. Bicarbonates are carbonate sources that are, again, naturally in water, but particularly in our deep well. So I'll cover that more in detail in a minute. But notice the pictures. So we got the new pump station has it been a month now, 6 weeks ago? There's a filter above that was needed cleaning. The guys did the filter, cleaned it out with some water, dripped down across the new station. And it dried 2 days later. What do you see right beneath? That shows you what's in the water, right? Okay, the salt precipitated out that quickly. Brand new station that had never had a drop of water on it. One time it drips and it's what you have. So you think salt might be rough on our equipment. Okay, you don't think about that part of it, but the old station, a big part of the reason that station had fallen into the situation that it was because of salt. Salt rust. Salt's hard on equipment. And you see some salt. That's actually from number 7 contact fairway this week. You can see the salt. Okay, when it gets dry, those precipitates, those salts that you saw in the pump station, guess where they are in the grass? Okay, if I were to give you a perfectly clean, fresh, nice glass of water, you were to drink it. Great, right? What if I put a little pinch of salt in it? Could you still drink it? You could, but it wouldn't taste so good, right? What if I dumped a whole bunch of salt in it? There comes a point where it makes you sick, all right? So turf's the same way. It can handle some amount of salt. If you get flushing rains, then there's things that we can do, products we can apply to flush salts out, to handle the bicarbonates, to dilute those things. But there comes a point where you're getting so much in the water that it's difficult to overcome from a turf grilling standpoint. Okay, so they're bad for the turf. What happens primarily is with drainage, they impact drainage, and then again they impede the soil's ability to take up nutrients properly. All right, they're harmful. All right, so here's what I would say about all of that as far as history and growing conditions go. This is the most difficult place to grow grass that I've ever been. All right, all of those things, when you compound all of those factors on top of each other, this is why it's hard to grow grass here. It'd be really easy if I could say, let's just fix the water, problem solved. Let's just fix the nematodes, problem solved. It's not that easy. You have a compounding situation where when you put those things on top of each other, it's very difficult to grow grass here. All right, a little more history and then we're going to get into today. So, Klondike was opened in 1985. Who was here in 2011? We might have a combo over here tonight. Everybody raise your hand for you. So a lot of you. Okay, so you saw the golf courses go under construction in 2011. We rebuilt Klondike greens completely. We did irrigation, bunkers, regrassed the fairways, a lot of tree work. There was a lot of work that went on in 2011. I want you to do a little math though. How many years since Klondike was built did it take to do the first major renovation? 26 years. All right, 26 years. That was about 5 to 10 years too many. I'm looking at some green chairmen who were dealing with all those problems way back then. They're sitting in front row. Okay, that should have been done 5 to 10 years before that. Morgan River. Morgan was opened in 1992. The renovation that we did, major renovation then, was in 2012, all right? So do the math, 20 years, right? One of the big differences, though, is that we only partially redid those greens, and this is important. 15 of the 19 greens on Morgan River, all we did was strip the top off, bring in some new mix, float it back out, and plant the new greens on that. The reason that was done was because the drainage and the infrastructure on that newer course was still pretty good, right? It saved us money. We could live with the drainage and the conditions that were there, so we didn't do all of them. That's going to be important as we start to think about the future and what needs to be done the next time, okay? Again, 20 years, that probably should have been done 5 years before that. All right, so with that history and kind of seeing where we've been, what I found when I arrived, and the issues that we face, what are we facing today? What are our major agronomic challenges in 2023? Well, I'm going to go back through that same list, okay? There's a lot of things that don't change. One of them that doesn't change is soil conditions, right? We're given the gumbo clay that we have. We're given the sugar sand that we have. All right, that's not going to change. What has changed, I still have to have fertility programs and do things to those holes that are one or the other completely different. But what has changed is the cost of fertilizer. All right? If you've looked in your own pocketbook the last 2 years, everybody knows what's happened to cost. Fertilizer went up 2 to 3 times since 2020, since COVID. I showed Roy Murdoch an invoice last year. Ammonium sulfate is just a basic nitrogen fertilizer that we would use for fairways, rough. It's just a simple 2100 basic fertilizer. Historically, that's been $10 to $14 a bag. I showed her an invoice last year, $32 a bag for the most basic fertilizer you can buy. Okay, so costs skyrocketed. All right, Solomon, the same thing. Everything that we need to apply to the golf course went through the roof. Well, how does that affect us? Well, because of cost and other factors, particularly the water. I'll explain more about that in a minute. But because of those factors, we've under-fertilized these golf courses the last 2 years. All right, your fertilizer didn't get you as far. If you bought more, it cost you, if you bought the amount that you needed, your cost was 3x. Okay, we haven't fertilized the way we need to based on price, but just as importantly, with the water changing, there are more inputs that we need to be doing to help combat the water situation. Okay, what about trees? How have they changed? What's our present condition on trees? Well, guess what? Trees keep growing, right? Trees don't get smaller over time. Trees get larger. And so those major issues that were on the greens specifically, we took care of all of that in 2011 and 12. But again, trees continue to grow. There's a continual program for us to prune to make sure that it doesn't impact the parts of the golf course where problems are caused. Roots, same thing. The roots are still trying to grow into the greens, just like the pictures I showed you. Again, 2011 and 12, you plant new greens, you do all that work, you clean that up for a while, but guess what's happening now? Those roots are back in the greens, they're back in the rough, they're back coming into the fairways from the trees. Now, we have tools to help with that. We have a root pruner, other things that we do to try to keep them at bay, but they're continuing to grow. The good news is that most of the removals that we did, that big report that I told you, most of that work is done. We've probably cut 1,000 trees since I've been here. Again, the 98% of those was to keep them from falling on your head, right? And so that's made sunlight to the golf course better. It's helped the grass in that regard, but it's made it much safer for you to play. The other good news is that we have highly trained staff. We have 4 or 5 guys that are really good at pruning trees. One of them actually just got his arborist certification. So I'm proud of these guys for the work that they've done to prune and to get sunlight to the holes, but to take care of those dangerous limbs and those things as well. So trees are an ongoing thing. There will never be a day when we don't need or do tree work. Okay? Let's talk about nematodes. They're making a comeback. All right? Nematodes are always there. They never left. But we controlled them. We put them at bay. We started over when we built new greens. But guess what? The populations are building again and they're causing problems. Here's a picture. You can see 10 or 12 nematodes. That's the things that are stinging into that root right there and taking the nutrients out of it, basically killing the plant. That's what's eating the roots. Okay. The bad news is, though, that our spray treatments are having less and less effectiveness. This is typical for a lot of things that you spray. If you continue to spray things, they tend to not work as good over time. And we're seeing that with nematode control. Okay, so take a look at these two pictures. The top picture there is a healthy root system. Right? On many vertic Bermuda greens, you're never going to have more than 4, 5, 6 inch roots. If you had 5-inch roots, I would sleep really good at night. But I want you to look at our roots right now on the right. They're bad. Okay, our roots are bad. The nematode populations are coming up. Again, those other compounding factors of water, fertility, some of those things are adding up. There's not much root mass. There's not much root mass in our greens right now. That makes me not sleep at night, okay? We need to deal with that. We don't want to go back to this, right? So this year we have an aggressive treatment that we put in the budget. We actually had it budgeted for August, but we need to move that up. I'll talk about that now. Right? We tried to just needle time air fire, just the air fires that's just poking solid holes into the greens a few weeks ago. You've seen the big place that chunked up on Morgan River 16. That was because there was so little root mass coming across that hill that just the action of that machine and the mower coming across it ripped the sod right out of the green. There's a spot right over here on number 9 Cottondyke under that very small tree that's right on the edge of the green. We were rolling Thursday, Friday last week, just a roller action going back and forth, pulled the sod off of the edge of the green. All right, our roots are very poor right now. All right, so with that being the case, we need to move that nematode treatment up. We're going to do that March 26th and 27th of this year, so that's what, 3 weeks. Okay, we're going to need to close the golf courses. We're going to treat that, but really the goal is to get those roots back healthy. If we try to air fire with the big course, which we need to do in May and June on both courses, if we were to do that right now, we literally would sod cut the greens. There's nothing there to hold the green together. Okay, and I'm hearing about this from other courses too. This is not a just us problem, but I'm not worried about them. We have to figure out what we're going to do to fix it. So the first step is going to be to treat for the nematodes. Let's remove that factor, at least temporarily. Again, they're going to come back. It's not like you treat them one time and they're gone. But that should get us going in the right direction so we can get some roots and be able to air fine do a normal thing in a couple months. All right, again, the other pest pressures have not gone anywhere as well. All right, there's still disease, there's still mold crickets, all of those things. This is a picture from number 16, Morgan River T. And we talked about moles. That's actually not even moles. Anybody want to take a guess what that is? Raccoons. It's probably raccoons. There's actually somebody, it was on the Dog.net a few weeks ago, but somebody has actually said they've killed 2 armadillos at Big Dog Top Point in the last 6 months. That's exactly what armadillos do. Okay, so it may be raccoons, maybe armadillos, could be birds, but they're eating the grubs, they're eating the earthworms, they're eating the mole crickets, whatever insects are in the ground, that's what those particular animals feed on. And so that's the kind of damage, again, if it's not one pest, it's another, right? And so the pest pressure here is tremendous. But guess what? We have people pressure too. We forget about this part, right? Golf play has exploded here. During the COVID 2020 year, every single person was riding their own car. Well, guess what that did to car traffic in 1 year? You just doubled it. Okay? Fast forward to 2022. Last year we did 67,000 rounds. Put that in perspective. 3 years earlier you did 47,000. You almost had a 50% increase in rounds in a 3-year period. Okay, play is expected to remain high. We're 1,000 rounds higher, according to Chris Fern, in January of this year than we were last year. Okay, what does that do to the golf course? That's more pressure, right? Car traffic compacts the soil, compacts the turf. You're going to see the effects of that as we go, so that's going to mean more aerification. All right, we'll discuss that in a minute. All right, I want to dive into this issue of water quality because I think this has probably had more impact than I realized over the last 2 years, and there's a reason why. The biggest reason why is that our water quality has changed. It's gotten worse in the last 3 years, so let me explain. A few years ago, Buford Jasper contacted us. We had actually contacted them. We felt like they were making too much effluent in the sense that in the winter, we were having to water, even when we didn't want to water, to get rid of the effluent that was in this holding pond. All right, what had happened was Ladies Island was exploding. They were sending water from Ladies Island, piping it to our treatment plant, our numbers doubled in a matter of 2 years, just from the growth of Ladies Island. Well, that's good. We have plenty of water now, but it's bad because in the winter you have too much. And so there's always this pros and cons, right? Pros and cons. And so that was an issue. This is a picture of our effluent pond. You can see it's just a line holding pond, the treatment plant's to the right. The water that's effluent comes out of that dark pipe that's just behind the ducts there. Okay, and when the water's treated, it comes out. It's not drinkable, but this is the water that we have for irrigation. All right, the quality of that water is marginal, but relatively speaking, it's good for effluent water. Again, there are many places that have worse effluent water than we do. It's not the best, but relatively it's pretty good for effluent. Okay, when we got to 2019, Buford Jasper decided they needed to divert a lot of that water from our plant because the plant that we have could only treat a certain amount per day. They had reached that max. With all the growth on Ladies Island, this plant could not take any more production. And that was good for us because we got rid of that winter problem, right? But guess what? It's bad for us because now you've cut into the water that we have for the summer. So it's all, again, pros and cons. All right, so what do we do to make up the difference? Well, what we did was we turned on our deep well. So we actually have another source of water down at that plant that we can turn on and turn off. All right, see that white pipe right there? That's the deep well. The well's back down the road a little bit right there. You turn that well on, and it will pump water that mixes with your effluent, and you water the golf courses. All right, problem solved, right? Well, it's not so easy. All right, the problem with the deep well is it's loaded with bicarbonates. Okay, so you took away 60 to 70% of our effluent water. The water you're replacing it with is much worse than that effluent that we were getting. Okay, so as I watered the last 2 years, as we've watered with this higher concentration of deep well water, I've seen the turf quality go down. Okay, again, I've been here 18 years. I can see things relatively that you may not see or notice. The last 2 years, your turf quality's gotten worse. And I think a big part of it is because this well has so much bicarbonates in it. So what do? Well, we have to treat more. We have to treat differently. I'm learning about bicarbonates. I'm adjusting our plans. The amendments, the things, the fertilizer, the things that we use all affect your turf's response, your soil's response to the bicarbonate load that's coming into it. Okay, so that's been a learning process for me. And basically my mantra this year is we're not going to keep doing the same thing that we've been doing. We've got to do something different. Okay, let me keep going though about the deep well. The deep well now makes up 1/3 of all the water that we use. Prior to that reduction by Buford Jasper effluent, it was less than 5%. Okay, now it's 1/3. So that just shows you the weighted difference there. But here's something else you need to know. Notice storage capacity in our ponds is very limited. There's a picture there of number 7, Cottondyke. So the front 9 of Cottondyke, 4, 5, 6, 7, all 3 of those ponds right there make up the pond water that we use for irrigation. All right, so think about how big those are in your mind. Let's assume for a minute that we had no effluent or no deep well. We turn them off. We just use pond water. Those ponds are completely full. How many days do you think we could go if we watered every day, normal watering? How many days do you think we could go with the amount of water that's in those 3 ponds? Take a guess. We could go about 7 to 10 days. Okay, so wrap your mind around that for a minute. Quantity is a big deal here, right? Every night that we water, we have to maximize the use of water from that plant and minimize what comes out of this pond. When we get in a 3-week dry spell and the pond drops like that, you don't see it, but we're within inches of we can't water anymore. Okay, when that pond, it has about 2 feet of usable water. That's it. Okay, so again, let your mind wrap around that for a minute. We are always, as our superintendent said, the water every night, we are constantly battling how much water do we run. We have a certain amount that the deep well will make. That's all it'll make. There's a certain amount the effluent makes based on you flushing your toilets and showers. However much that makes on a daily basis is what we have. Okay? If we go over that, that pond goes down. If we go over that, now it's taking, they can only send us so much, now it's taking water out of that pond. So, it's a big problem. If we run out, I'm stuck. Okay? So there's not a huge quantity of water that we have on site. All right, so what are we doing about that? What are the things that we can control? So let's do quality first. Water quality it kind of is what it is, right? There's not a whole lot I can do to change the water quality. What I can do is change inputs. And that's kind of what I was mentioning a minute ago. I'm learning as we go with bicarbonate, and there are definitely some things that I have to do differently and treat more aggressively. Okay? We got to change what we're doing. It's not working. Short roots are an indication of that. Soil conditions have affected it. They're just things that we need to do differently, right? Right? What about water quantity? So there are opportunities that we're looking at. How can we get more water? How can we have more of a cushion, more of a buffer, so that we're not so worried every time it goes dry, so that if the effluent plant were to go down for whatever reason, the deep well has a power problem, anything could happen, right? Well, you don't want to have 1 week of water and we're standing here with no water for greens, teas, whatever we have. So finding those water quantity opportunities are going to be important. So there's a couple things that are happening. The club has established a task force. There's several members on it. Ted and I are on it. And we've been talking with Buford Jasper and others. There are opportunities where maybe we can pipe more effluent from across town, one of the other plants, to Dog Top. I can hear the cha-chings, as you do, right? Okay, that can be very expensive. There's also an engineering group that are looking at other ponds on the island. So as you all know, we just replaced the Morgan River pump station. How much water is up there? Is it usable? Are the ponds connected properly to make that work? My personal feeling is, know what I know from being here 18 years, there's not a lot of water up there. Okay? Are there opportunities to reconfigure that? I'm not an engineer, we'll find out. There's a study being done on that. Right? All alternatives are being considered. We've also thrown out, why don't we just accept the bad water we have? You all know that we dug a well beside Cutback Pump Station. It's probably been a year ago now, and found that water to be too salty. Why not just accept that salty water and change grasses to a grass that's salt tolerant? Okay, that's a whole other rabbit trail. All right, I wouldn't go to that until last. Absolutely, we have to. But all of these things should be considered. All right, water is going to be extremely important to this club as we go in the next 10 years. We have people that are working on it and looking at it. All right, so what are our future opportunities? What are the things, based on all of that information, what are the things that we should be doing? What are we doing to plan for the next 10 years? All right, so the club board and Ted give us department heads goals every year. One of my SMART goals last year was to develop a 10-year plan. And so I've done that. I'm going to make it available to all of you. The Green Committee has a copy. The boards have a copy. But it's not secret information, okay? And so we're going to make that public, but it's going to contain a lot of these goals in there as to where we're going. It covers every piece of infrastructure, every green, every tee, every fairway, irrigation, bulkheads, everything, all right? And it shows you when they were last repaired, what my best guesses are to fix them, what needs to be done. There's a lot of information there. But we're going to make that public to everyone as well. But what do we need to do in the short term? I've presented problems that we have today. What do we need to be worried about fixing right this minute? So number one, we've got to get the greens healthy, okay? The next 3 months until we get to this aerification, I'm not worried about green speed. All right, I'll do my best to keep it good. It's not going to be, greens are not going to be rolling 6, okay? Our standard for the club calls for greens from 10 feet to 11 feet on the step meter. That's a good speed, and what you put on every day is in that range. But if we do a treatment, if we do this nematode treatment, one of the things that happens is you should get an explosion. It's going to, an explosion of growth. It should kill the nematodes, which are going to unlock a lot of nutrients and things that those microscopic entities are holding in and locking up. It's going to release, which means the greens are going to grow. And that's good, right? Well, it's good, except your ball rolling slow. Okay, so if it slows down, good. Okay. Right, that means we're getting grass back, right? And again, one of the big things that I have to do is adjust fertility. We've got to figure out a way to get roots in the next 3 to 6 months. Okay? What else? We need to aerify more. Again, we're going to focus on greens, fairways, rough. All of that traffic is adding up. And you can see it as you play right now. This is the most difficult time of the year for the golf course. The next 2 months are when the grass is really weak. It's coming out of dormancy. It's been beat up all winter by traffic. It's trying to green up. It's warm enough today. It's not tomorrow. This is just a tough time for the grass. Poan is at its peak. Mole crickets are at its peak. There's just a lot of things going against it. So Be patient in the next 2 months, but as the grass really gets going, you're going to see things improve. But we need to control car traffic and airify the right way this year. We're going to implement some new things, all right? This is called phrase mowing, that picture you see there. What a phrase mower is, it's a machine. You can think of it like a planer. Any of you who do woodwork, you have a crooked board, you plane it, and it makes a nice, clean surface, right? Well, that's essentially what this machine does. It goes down 1 to 2 inches. You can actually adjust the depth and set it to where you want. But what that machine does is take off a surface layer. All right? When it takes off that surface layer, you can see that it's leaving the thatch, a little bit of thatch, a little bit of rhizomes, roots. It's not killing the grass. All right? It's leaving enough grass that we fertilize that and it grows right back. Okay? So the 2 areas that I think that can help us are specifically collars. You ever putted on our collars and notice that you hit a little ramp? Okay, you putt from off the green and it hits a little bump. It shouldn't be that way. Not only does it affect your ball roll, it affects water coming off of the green. Right? Greens are built such that water should shed off of them and not collect on them. We were watering greens for a fertility out today, and I see puddles all over the greens. That's not good. You want the water to get off the green. All right, so if we take those collar areas out, that machine will cut down some of those humps around the edges. Your ball's going to putt better, and the water's going to get off the green. Okay, that's the idea. The other area that we're going to do is the driving range tee. That tee was redone, I guess, 2003. It was probably about that time. It hasn't really had major work since then, other than adding a little bit to the back edge there when we cut some trees down. But that driving range, if you were to mow it, these guys will tell you, if you mow it, it feels like you're on a roller coaster, right? It's just chattering, it's rough. So we'll use this machine, and just like you see in the picture, it's going to start to smooth a lot of those areas down and kind of start over for the driving range. Okay, that'll be done this summer. It's going to take a little time to grow back. So it's not going to be perfect for a little bit, but given time, it will grow back. We'll heavily fertilize it. It'll take 6 to 8 weeks, and it'll be better than ever. Okay? Another thing that we'd like to try this year is more top dressing. All right, last year you saw that on the tees, we top dressed more than normal. Those are the new tees that we were trying to get to firm up. Okay? And as they were new, they don't have a lot of thatch. They don't take the wear the same. We were putting sand in there for those reasons, but it's really a smoothing process and to get them to be nice and firm. Okay, so that should help us. We're going to continue to do that on tees, but we're also going to do some approaches this year. One of the things that we talked about in green committee is just how a lot of members here like to bounce their balls into the green. Well, approaches here sometimes can be more sticky, more soft than is ideal for your ball to bounce and to roll properly onto the green. So my idea was to do less aerification this year on the approaches specifically and top dress them more. That should firm them up, your ball should bounce, it should be smoother, and your ball will roll into the green, hopefully better with your shot. I can't promise that will happen, but let's try it. Let's do something different. We're going to see how that affects it, if it's a positive change. I would not say that we would do that forever. It becomes a point where you got to aerify it or you're going to have traffic that ends the grass out, right? And so this is something to try. Let's do something different. And here's an exciting one, all right? This is the last short-term goal. We talked about it at times the last 5 or 10 years, but we're gonna install a new bulkhead on Cotton Dyke 16 green, all right? Every one of you, if you hit a shot that just quite doesn't make it into 16 there, it hits right into that muddy, wet, tall grass, and you stand there and look for your ball for 10 minutes, right? Everybody's done it. Well, it really shouldn't be that way. It's not safe. It slows down play. It's just not an ideal situation. The other part of it is, it'd be really nice if I had some structure there that I know the front of that green, the erosion is not going to impact it. Okay, so a bulkhead will accomplish your golfing goals, but it will also solidify something so that we don't have erosion that impacts the green and the investment that we've made there. So that should happen in the next year and a half. We started getting pricing and a little bit of planning, but we got to find a date on the calendar to make that work. And so that hopefully will be done in the next year and a half. All right, so let's talk about long-term goals. All of that I just mentioned, we should be able to accomplish this year. From a long-term perspective, though, we got to keep working on this water issue. That's not something that Ted and I can stand here and solve today. You understand the issue now, and you know that there's a group working on it. That's going to be a 5 to 10 year thing. What do we do with future water quantity issues? Again, I mentioned the master plan, all right? That's been completed as far as my work and Chris Fern's work to see where we're going. But here's an important thing that I would tell you. By 2030, we really need to have a plan that says we're ready to do something. All right, so do the math again. 2011, 2012. It's 18, 19 years since the last major project. Okay, when I look at my watch, it's 2023. And so we need to be starting to talk about, okay, what do we want to do? What are the pieces that absolutely must be fixed? How good is the infrastructure that we have? What are the renovations you want to do to the house, right? And again, we don't need to let it get to some of those pictures that I showed you before. Greens and bunkers especially, they don't last forever. Okay, I can make good arguments for redoing some greens, some bunker faces. How many have been in a bunker face and you see it kind of caving down, flaking apart? Again, that's just from use and from super sandy soils. It's hard to keep enough water, fertility on the bunker faces. If one person hits a shot off of it, you can wreck the whole face. Okay, that's the kind of thing that wear does. And so, what should we be doing? When should we be doing it? How are we saving money to get there? Okay, that's another big goal. And then last, the driving range. There are really some major upgrades that are needed for the driving range. Chris Fern and I have met consistently about this, and Dave Britton, I think Dave is here somewhere, but Dave and I drew a map. I'm going to have that map, Dave, from literally 15 years ago, that this is what we need to do to the range. And I would say half of that stuff, over the time I've been here with Dave and Chris, that we got a lot of that done. But there's really some opportunities to make it even better. Number one are safety concerns. If you're hitting bunker shots, and the 2 bunkers we have, you should have more options, number one. But number two, to hit across that green towards other people chipping and then towards the first tee, you wouldn't design it that way, okay? That could be much better. So there's safety concerns. New teaching opportunities, learning center. Again, this was in Dave's plans way back. Chris has pushed for this as well, but it would be an awesome thing, an upgrade for Dottoff. We had a learning center that was to the right of the driving range. It was enclosed. You could have all the latest technology, updated equipment so that these guys could teach, so that they could have indoor lessons. It's raining, your lesson doesn't have to get canceled. Okay, you can do all that. You can be by yourself. I know a lot of people don't like to get lessons in front of everybody else on the range, right? You could go over to your little private area and get lessons with no interruption. That would be a really nice upgrade. Additionally, on the back of that building, one of the concerns has always been where we put the picker. Ever just looked over to the right? It looks so bad. Got a picker sitting there. There's nowhere to put it. Another problem for Chris and those guys, they got to run down to the bottom of the cart barn right beneath you to clean the balls, the range balls, take them back out there. It's just a laborious process running back and forth. So that building could house the range picker, could house the ball washer. You could get balls on the pyramids much quicker, cleaner. It would just be a nice thing to have over there, all right? Another area that we should look at is enhanced chipping and putting areas. In that area to the right of it's to the right of the driving range, to the left of number 1 Morgan T, there's a big area in there. Okay, a lot of those trees are laurel oaks with phytophthora root rot, just like I showed you. Eventually, those trees are going to have to come down anyway. Okay, there's one big live oak in there, but other than that, all those trees are kind of aging out and not so good. There's a great area right there that you could come right behind that learning center and build a really nice chip and green putting area. And again, they could have putting clinics, chipping clinics, and not have to shut down the whole other side for everybody else. Right? So there's just a lot of opportunity there if you want to look at those opportunities in the future. If we're rebuilding greens, if we're rebuilding bunkers and doing a project in 2030, that's a great time to do it, okay? To combine those types of things together. All right, so as I conclude today, I hope this has been enlightening. I hope you see where we've been, where we are. We have some issues right now. I have nothing to hide, okay? There's some things that I wish I had done differently. Fertility, we've got to get a hold of those things. Nematodes, we've been spraying, but it's not working. There's a lot of things out there that we just need to get our minds around so that we don't go back to some of those pictures that you saw. And my goal, my plan is that that doesn't happen. However, we need to have a future plan as well. And so I hope that, again, this opened your eyes and that we can put that plan together as a group, as a membership, as a green committee. All right, we want to be heading in the right direction collectively and make this place better. All right, so with that, I will